Good evening again, everyone, and welcome to part two on the episode of time considerations and how that should affect the way we live and how that should affect future government systems and future economies. As I mentioned, or as I was just mentioning at the end of part one of the episode, uh, if you actually look at it in a holistic manner, you will realize that your quality of life is higher than that of almost every king and queen in the history of mankind. And that's something that can be shocking when you've never thought about it that way. I highly advise you to go back to part one if you haven't seen it to see how I justify that position. And as I was saying before I stopped recording, the argument that I'm about to make, I've heard in support of democracy as a political system and of capitalism as an economic system, but I truly believe that the actual driver of this drastic increase in quality of life is neither of those things, but rather it's technology. Because when you think about it, very, let's say, traditionalist societies, such as old school China, for example, did also uh, improve the quality of life of their citizens very much. And they weren't a democracy, definitely not. They weren't capitalist. Oh no, right? But it's through the development of all their technologies that they were able to, and their medicine and all that, that they were able to increase the quality of life of their citizens. So I really think that technology is the main driver of human growth, quality of life increases, and we need to realize that um, technology continues to progress, and that therefore, our life, our considerations should be looking forwards and should be taking that into account when we are making plans or when we are deciding how to choose our leaders or to allocate our resources, etc. To link to the other two topics I will be talking about in the future episodes, uh, as opposed to what most or almost everyone does, which is only considering themselves or the now. Right? I think that, and to link to the other topics again, I think that both capitalism and communism are systems that, in theory, should work and would do great things. Like communism, I'm sorry to say, maybe I shouldn't be saying this out loud, but I think that communism is probably, in theory, the ideal human system of organization. But the problem is that we don't live in theory and in the ideal world, and in real life, humans are fallible, humans are corruptible, and humans want power, and no one actually applies the real principles of communism to the letter. Now, don't get me wrong, the exact same thing is true about capitalism, because there's no actual real capitalist society in the world. What we have is crony capitalism in most cases, but that's beside the point. To get back to what I was saying is that when people elect their leaders, or when people choose where to invest their money, very few people look at the long-term growth of the company. Very few people look at how is this government going to make the life of my children better. Most people, really, all they care about is Is this government right now going to fix whatever problem I think is the issue? So if I think that there's not enough redistribution of wealth and too much accumulation at the top, well, is this government gonna tax the rich right now and give it to the poor? Or if I think the opposite, well, is this government gonna stop all the red tape, so cut through all the red tape, to use the I don't even want to say his name, but the Donald rhetoric there, so that there's more business investment in our country and that we become richer that way, right? Like, it all depends on what echo chamber you currently live in. To relate this back to another topic I had before about confirmation bias and how no one ever actually looks to the other side of the aisle to see if they might have a point. Everyone only just reinforces their own view through confirmation bias by seeking only the sources that agree with their opinions in the first place. But again, I'm digressing. What I'm trying to say, or what I want to get at, is that people need to start to realize that change is good sometimes, but there's also some traditions that are worth keeping. But in both cases, it takes time, and you can't or shouldn't expect everything to happen instantly, right? There's this big woke movement and revolution, right? And I find it astounding how everyone is expecting that they come, and I mean mostly younger people, right? They come to a certain conclusion. Oh, the world is bad, or because of this, or it's not fair that this type of group, in my opinion, is marginalized or disadvantaged or something like that, and therefore immediately everything must be dropped, and my problem has to be fixed now, and there's no thought or no appetite for a middle ground. There is no consideration for the fact that it might be a process to get from point D to point W, right? They seem to want to jump straight from A to Z without even considering that there might be some people in the middle, and that you actually need to go through B, C, D, E, F, etc. before you get to Z. It's not because you are at Z that everyone else is, or that it's even justified to expect anyone else to be at that point just because you are. So that's kind of the main point that I want to make. And again, this is more kind of an introduction and to sort of set the stage for the actual meat of what I want to talk about, which is more the actual political system reforms and economic system reforms. But I think it's important to make the point that nothing happens instantly. Everything is happening faster and faster, and again, that's not due in my mind, even though some people will say due to capitalism, but no, it's due in my mind to technological progress. So give time to technology to fix our issues. That probably wasn't as well said as it could or should have been. You need to work towards a solution that will work tomorrow, not expect a solution to be parachuted and implemented right this day. You need to give time for the transition. also need to start to look at, what's going to be good for future me, not just what's good for current me right now. And when I say future me or current me, you could say it on the individual level. Oh, there's a rabbit. But I also mean as a societal level. I'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, and then when I get to the economic system. But like our entire pension plan, economy, social systems in Canada are all completely screwed. And why is that? It's because people 2 generations ago decided to make social programs that would make their own lives better, right? The social safety nets, etc., the pension plans, all of that stuff, right, was all instituted by a generation that, at least here in North America, Canada and the US, was swimming in wealth as a result of the rest of the world burning during the first 2 world wars, right? And they never, it seems, has anyone then come back and say, okay, maybe we need to look at this. We built our system mathematically on the principle that there would always be more young people coming into the workforce than there are old people exiting it, creating a wider base for the income pyramid than top of the pensioners. And also the system is funded in such a way based on life expectancy at the time, where people would collect their pensions for 5 years and then die, right? That is not the reality anymore. Yet, do you see any boomers willingly wanting to reduce these systems, these pensions, these benefits that they have? Of course not. Because they feel that they are entitled to it because their dad or their mom probably got it. So, it's not fair that they don't. So, because the people before them, because they're looking backwards at the people before them, they seem to be completely blind, these boomers, decision makers, to what's coming after them. And it doesn't take a long, hard look at the housing crisis, at inflation, at everything that's going on in the world economy right now to realize that, hey, maybe instead of looking backwards, we should be looking forwards, because right now, you might not be consciously intending it while you're out on your cruise in Hawaii or whatever it is, big in fat on your pension that you're collecting for as long as you actually worked, but you're really screwing your children and your children's children by being this selfish. Hey, maybe that's not a problem for you. Now, I don't agree with that moral position, I think, but I can see why some people would hold it. I'm not judging them here. I have to be honest. I judge them a little bit because I don't think that it's the right way to look at it. But yeah, I guess I think if only a few people thought a little bit more about what's good for their children, or even if they don't have children, their society 5 years from now, as opposed to just what's good for them now, things would be very different. And that's one of the things I'm going to try to explain that needs to change when I talk about political systems in the next few episodes. I feel like I'm starting to go around in circles here, as the topic of time was really just sort of an introduction to frame. Daisy, keep going. To frame the discussion for the actual meat of it, which is tomorrow. But since I'm still a little bit far from home, I guess I'll keep going. It is a demonstrable fact that life expectancy is increasing rapidly everywhere. Well, everywhere. There's always exceptions. Please take all my absolutes always as having a little asterisk next to them. But yeah, life expectancy is up. Everything that everyone can do is so much better than it used to be, and that's in no small part due to first of all, liberalization of ethics, right? The increase of human rights or expansion of human rights to not just apply to straight white males like me, but to start to expand to minorities and all that. And that's a good thing. Same thing when you look at different countries, right? To bring the economics into play, you can clearly trace a line where following the implementation of capitalist investment throughout the world and how that has affected lifestyle and the purchasing power of those countries, right? I remember when I was a kid, everything was made in Japan, right? Now, nothing is made in Japan anymore, right? Why is that? Because, well, all this capital investment that was put into their infrastructure eventually raised them from a, let's say, I'll say third world country, and that's not really true, but hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say, from a very impoverished nation at the end of the Second World War to the third biggest economy in the world, right? Then everything was made in Taiwan, and Taiwan industrialized itself after all this capital investment, and now look at how it is, right? Then everything was made in China, and look at the meteoric rise of the purchasing power of the average Chinese citizen from 20 years ago to today, right? And now that China is being fully industrialized, now it's starting to move away from there to new locations, right? You can follow over time the improvement of people's lives based on capitalist investment. So when people, and this runs contrary to one of my core principles that I truly hold near, which is, we should help out our fellow man, right? Like increase, as I always say, increase our in-group, right? And try to advantage as many people as possible, not just ourselves, right? So you would think that goes contrary to the capitalist ethos of putting money and wealth into the hands of a few and letting them profit. But that's only if you take a 3D view of the problem, right? Right now, capitalist investment might be serving to increase the wealth gap between the richest and the poorest people in, whichever, let's say India or whichever country is developing its industrial base due to capital investment from outside, right? Right now, you might be saying, oh, it's a bad thing and we need to redistribute this wealth and help the poor and all of that, right? And I would say, okay, that's a good way to look at it for now. But what if you take a bit more of a 4D view of things? Maybe it's a good thing that this is happening, because over the long term, the benefits, and I'm going to use a word that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be mad about, but the benefits of this investment, even though right now it's creating a larger wealth gap, it's overall going to, over time, trickle down, and that's a word I'm sure people will be mad about, to everyone within the society, to the point where even 10 years from now, the poorest person in that society will likely have a much better quality of life than the average person in that same society today, right? So if you try to stop this and redistribute the wealth generated by these capitalistic investment to help your fellow man now, what you're in fact doing is hamstringing the opportunity of all of the fellow men that's gonna come later, right? You're hamstringing your children in order to benefit yourself now, which is completely ridiculous, or in my mind at least, daisy unjustifiable, right? So that's where I think that the 4D thought comes in. Don't just think about making things better for people who are around now. Think about making things better for humankind, right? Increase the in-group to not just the 7 billion people that live today, but to the how many billion that are going to live tomorrow and next century, right? So, hey, I'm sure you can see, or I can go with all of this. I don't want to go through every single example. I'm doing a little detour before I get home just to finish my point. But that's where I kind of get. Well, okay, maybe it costs us a lot of money right now, and it will have to suffer if we increase interest rates to rein in inflation, or if we stop getting fast cash through the exploitation of oil and switch to renewables, right? But look at it from the long-term perspective, and what the positive is going to be when you integrate it over time, or negative is going to be when you integrate it over time, not just right now, right? So people just want to kick the can. People don't down the road not deal with the problem now. People want to have free liquidity and be able to continue to buy their huge pickups and this and that because their father did it. So why shouldn't they be able to do it, right? And again, they're looking backwards. We need to start looking forward. We need to consider our children. We need to consider future generations and act accordingly. Integrate your decision making over time and look towards the future. Stop looking towards the past and believing that everything is owed to you just because others have had it. If you see the world that way, I think it'll change a lot. That would change society as a whole, from who they want to elect to where they invest their money and resources. And it's only when our society starts to mature a little bit, and I don't have a lot of hope for this because, especially in North America, it's very clearly what's happening right now is the rise of the individualist culture and the special snowflake, and everyone is entitled to everything. It's becoming worse. So to preach altruism and selflessness, I know that no one or very few people are gonna actually take my message to heart, but in my mind it's really the only way to make everything better. So, and that can sometimes feel contradictory, like I said, right? In the now, it feels like I should be let's say giving more to charity or this or that, but in order to help people who are suffering today. But maybe that's not the best thing to do for the future. Maybe increasing, and I say charity, I do think charity is almost always a good thing. I meant more like, let's say, social programs, right? And things like that. Maybe it's not better to increase the money that people on social assistance, or however that it's called in your country, receive. And maybe it's better to say, hey, sorry, but some of us will need to suffer now. But that means that we'll be able to invest all this money in creating this, I don't know, this food factory that's going to be able to feed generations to come, or to invest that money instead in this long-term infrastructure, I don't know, electrical, renewable energy electrical plant or something like that will not make your life better because it's going to take 20 years to build, but it will make your society's life better in the long run. What happened to all these mega projects like the Hoover Dam or this or that? Where is that gone? People are so focused on getting, reelected 4 years from now, or on increasing the profit margin for this quarter, that they are hamstringing the future potential of what they're doing. And in the end, that's just detrimental to everyone. So I'm not saying that the answer is let's stop all programs and only invest in capitalist projects from now on. Not at all, because as I said at the top, capitalism is as corrupt, if not worse, than communism in most countries, right? But I'm not trying to provide the solution here. I'm just trying to provide a different frame of reference for you to make your decisions. And you, I mean you, but also society as a whole, over the long term. It's time to mature a little bit and grow up and start to look forward, not backwards. And since I've said that about 3 times right now, I think that's enough for today. Thanks for listening, and I hope that I'm really like to hear what you think about this point, and how need to take a little bit more of a long-term view to your goals. And that can apply on the individual level too, right? To your life goals and all that. So anyway, I'm not going to go down that route. But maybe that seeing things like that can help you decide not to spend $400 on shots at the bar this weekend, and instead invest that $400 in a course or in something else, right? Anyway, thanks for listening. Again, as usual, please give me your opinions, thoughts, comments. Really appreciated. Unfortunately, it was a very long one. It's going to be a pain for the subtitle, but thanks for listening. Have a good evening.